Do you know if Megan's gonna attend today?
My understanding was that she was planning to. I don't see her currently.
They just had an office move and their Wi-Fi.
Oh, there
is a
she
little-
is.
little funky.
No,
Oh, there we
she's
go.
not here yet.
Hey, Megan,
I see her name.
how's the new office, Megan? Everything's okay?
It is beautiful.
Good.
We're working through unpacking, but we have
Good.
some tech issues, but other than that, it's great.
Wow, that office is way better than the one that you had in the previous calls.
I loved my old office, but I'm like an old building girly. I like the old vintage, but this one is really nice too. So no complaints.
Well, good morning. Let's get started. Thanks for allowing me the extra 10 minutes to get my life organized with things that pop up unexpectedly. I think everybody on this call understands how that goes. Unless people have an objection, I was going to not go through introductions again at this point. But if somebody feels that they would like that, I think that would, I'm certainly happy to entertain that. Right, so I think we can dispense with the intros because I'm not seeing any hands raised. Anyway, good morning. We'll start with the minutes. And again, want to say thank you to Haley and to Jenna for putting those together, along with providing the recording. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review those minutes. Has everyone had a chance? Yes. Okay. And are there any additions, corrections, concerns? Okay, seeing none on my screen, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on August 20th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Oh, I will second Amy's.
Right, all in favor, voting members? Hand up, thumbs up, whatever it takes.
With a comment that I wasn't there, but Megan didn't raise any objections as my proxy, so we will approve. SAS approves.
Any objections? All right, I'm not seeing anybody, so the minutes are approved. And Haley, or I think is Jenna on as well? I can't see everybody at the same time, so I'm going off of most of the people that I can see, but if I'm missing something, if you would just let me know. Sure. So the agenda, again, these conversations are so fruitful, and there's so many things that come up. Obviously, again, we are not going to cover all of this in our time. So a lot of it, I feel, is just, putting pins in things and making sure that we just don't forget these different pieces. Are there any additions or deletions that are suggested? We might be a little bit fluid today in terms of how things come up, but I think of an agenda, and I don't know if this is helpful or not, but just as we follow the conversation, and these are pieces that we want to touch upon. So seeing no hands raised, we can kind of proceed with this as our roadmap for today. All right. I did want to make some space for thoughts that were raised after the meeting, and for folks who didn't have a chance, who had proxies, to weigh in on some of those different pieces. Not going to immediately kind of target you, Tim, but I know that there have been some things that have come up in terms of conversations that were had at the meeting and some of the changes that were made, and some feedback that you also wanted to provide.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm happy to just keep it very brief. I wanted to let everyone know, first of all, one of the other people that taught me how to be a prosecutor on the other side is Cassidy Renfro, DOC, who's just an incredible person. We're so lucky she's in that position. But I am very blunt with Cassidy, which she'll tell you. And she and I have been communicating about really getting the ball rolling on an MOU. And so I think in our own realms, I think everyone should start thinking about, what do I currently do in the space I'm doing it? Is it based on statute? Is it based on practice? Outlining all those pieces so we can get that going. And I did put in mostly so that it can go in the right direction, a formal request that if there are any changes to Vine's notifications, that I be notified, because the last two changes, one concerning transfers in between facilities and one concerning transfers to court, which may seem benign on their face, but there's a reason why both have an impact, seem to have occurred, not in agreement with the DOC document saying what they'll do if people sign up for Vines. And second, I'm finding out at the county level, so I'm not able to coordinate with my 28 offices about what those changes are. So not that I need to be in the know about everything all the time, but if there's a statewide change to a statewide program, I will get notified by some form or another, and then I'm playing catch up, and then it's not coordinated, and then victim advocates are reaching out to us for support. Hey, why didn't I know about this? So I don't think there's ill intent, but I do think we can do a lot better. And so whenever there's a change, one, while we have this task force, I think this is a good place to announce those changes formally, and rather than in between meetings or in the context of an individual case. And second, I presume Amy would feel the same way with in terms of victims she's working with on the investigation side. But those types of changes, we're happy to give feedback. You don't always have to accept it. You have control over that program, and that's your autonomy. But we're happy to provide it. And also, just if it's happening, like I recently put out a new transport policy for our transport program. It pissed off most people, but I let everyone know about it. And I'd prefer to be pissed off at in a unified way, as opposed to like in 14 different ways personally, as someone that runs statewide programs. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And then in terms of like why these things are important to inform victim advocates in our department on, one is we had a case, family member was sexually assaulted by another family member. That person was detained and located in County X, far away from the alleged victim. That person was then transferred to the same county as the victim, and Vines notified the person. They had a mental health breakdown, but they were aware of it. And when they were going to school every day, they had to go by that facility. But they knew their uncle, in that case, was in that facility, rather than it being a mystery. And it's sort of like, I got the question, it was a good question from Cassidy. It's like, well, what? It's still DOC, and it's like, it's because of that impact. And then our victim advocate got absolutely called. Like, oh my gosh, they transferred the person. So that's one of the reasons why the transfer between facilities is really important. So we can inform the victims, and some of it's, we have a pending investigation. So we're talking with Amy as well. And then in terms of the court piece, we have the responsibility, and this goes to the MOU, to inform the victim. Here's the court appearance, you got a plea agreement on the table, all that sort of thing. But we don't possess the body of the person who's being detained. And so there was a recent case where it was almost like we didn't care that the person came to our court or was appearing remotely. They did come to court, and it was a little bit of a surprise. And the victim had been told by our victim advocate, you will be informed if the person's coming to court. And then that didn't happen. And so those two changes, while they might seem benign and totally in the realm of DOC, with full respect, us being aware of them so we can tell the victims, hey, just so you know, if they're coming to court for whatever for whatever the reasons are, that's no longer going to be a notification you're going to be receiving. But we can always check offender locator. Like, we can do some stuff in our end that we know how to do really well with existing tools. But that's why those changes, which seemed potentially borderline benign, are really not from our perspective. And so, and I would presume, I'm looking at Charlie as well, there's people that are working with victim advocates in the community as well that would want to be aware of these changes about where someone's located, if they're coming to court or not. And so I did receive quite a volume of emails. And so because of that, I do want to make sure we're formalizing that communication, which could be like step one in our MOU, right? And the same likewise for us. I use the example of a VOP, but if we started using a different process for how we prosecute DOPs, DOC still does the filing, then we adopt and do the case. We would want to let DOC know, hey, here's what we're going to be doing going forward for these reasons on our end, rather than you all finding out. And I'm going to use the example of Windsor just because Megan's here, but Windsor County's going to do it this way now. Is that a statewide change or is it only a Windsor change? So that sort of coordination is helpful because yes, I have 28 elected people. They all think that they are the most important people in the world on a pretty regular basis. And when they see a change in the field that one of their victim advocates or staff tells them about, they expect that I know about it. So if I don't, I have to do my best to try to figure out what's going on. So I know we can do better on that front. And I think this is honestly a really good forum to bring it up. So sorry, it took some time on that, but it did come up and I did receive a load of feedback. I'm sure Megan has as well. So Megan, did I miss anything on that?
No, I think you captured it. I flagged some of the issues around the transfers in a different fashion, Tim, but I think that captures kind of the way that we're seeing it play out here. Thank you.
And just since you mentioned my name, Tim, I will say I had, since our last meeting, both the fortunate and unfortunate opportunity to attend 2 different homicide arraignments and to see how this was talked about in 2 different counties was something that I've been thinking a lot about. And in light of exactly what you just said, one of those counties was Megan's county. So I felt pretty good and solid, not so much in the other one. So trying to think about like, what is my role there and, how can I help with that? And also then thinking about consistency around the state. So I just wanted to follow up with that.
And to that point, actually, I am thinking of something additional. It's a little bit unclear to me. I think Cassidy spoke to this last meeting, but I just wanted to clarify. So if the person is released from custody from court, which obviously we will be in communication with a survivor at that point, but will there be a notification if they're not returned to the facility or no?
Yes, there still will be, Megan.
Okay, so they'll get if they don't book back in, then at some point that evening, they will get a notice saying they've been released from custody.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's helpful in terms of our communication to the Sabbaths.
Absolutely.
I'm really happy to hear that confirmation, Meredith.
Well, I warned folks it might be a little bit fluid, and given some of your references, Tim, in terms of the MOU piece, it feels like maybe it'd just be helpful to pull that from further down in the agenda and just have that conversation now in terms of how that is moving along and any supports or needs that process could benefit from in terms of the group.
And this is the one meeting where Kim and I got double booked, but typically she listens into legislative material or things that stem from it. But I think we could put together, and actually Megan and others worked on like a 101 for our VAs a couple of years ago at a training. And so we could put together kind of what our universe is and send that over to send it to the group here. I think for the handoffs and all that sort of stuff to get the ball rolling on that. May take a little, may not be an overnight thing just to put it in a format that would be helpful, but I think we can work on that. Megan and I can maybe chat with Kim and some of the other really engaged VAs. There's a train going by, I'm sorry. But we'd be happy to kind of get the ball rolling on that. And, I think Cassidy has definitely showed some interest like in what's happening in DOC world. And so the sort of my blind spots would be one of the things I'd love to do is to get, the judiciary won't sign it, but to sort of capture some of the things judges are required to do as well, because they are required to do certain things that they don't always do. So us as a group, because they're not in the room, they're fun to criticize, we should definitely keep an eye on what the judiciary's role is, because they have requirements as well that affect all of us. So I'd be happy to get the ball rolling on that. Jen, I can talk with Kim and Megan on, there was a training that I could use as a starting point.
But I think that's fair also for us to flag in our recommendations if there are pieces where, and obviously we want to involve the judiciary at some point when we get to that place, but if there are pieces where we need a little bit more of a, intentional role for them, then I think that's within our purview. So I appreciate that. And actually, I was in a meeting yesterday on the Vermont Citizens Advisory Board for DCF, and they talked about DOC having a MOU with DCF in terms of information sharing. And I don't know where you all are in your process. It sounds like it's still a little bit in that just gathering stage, but that might be a format. And I'm kind of looking at Isaac and Cassidy in terms of those pieces, and maybe Isaac knows about this, but I didn't know that they had an MOU for information sharing, because that is one of those pieces that obviously the legislature was very interested in. So I'd be happy to track that down if that format might be a helpful place to kind of build those components in. But maybe it's not. So just to let you know that I had just heard about that yesterday. So I was like, oh, okay, we got the meeting tomorrow. So let me see if that might be helpful.
We can circle up on our side too, Jen, and take a look at that.
Okay. But I know everybody's busy, and I do think that would be, I think that's one of those pieces that they're really clearly very interested in getting some clarity on for sure before we start the session. So anything the group can do to help with that, I know we would all be on board for that.
And I think, Jen, on the MOU piece, we should kind of be clear that it's going to be a living document, as stuff changes, as resource changes and that sort of stuff, but having the bare pieces put in there will be really helpful. One, so we can all speak from one, and even if it's not perfect by the time legislative session kicks off, which I hope it looks good, but it's a working document that we can all work off of. Like, even if we have some disagreements, which we're going to have, by the way, on things, like having a document we're all working on together would be a good thing to have, for this group, I think.
And obviously so important for the victims and survivors that we are here for, is to have like a clear document that says, well, or my understanding was, or like, here's our working MOU. And obviously it will be a living document, but I think that clarity piece for those of you who are doing the difficult work in the field, but for the people that we serve and hope to serve well in these situations when they're going through trauma. Jane, I see your hands up.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to see if Megan had a chance to check her email. I'm so sorry. It is related. Sorry.
I just wanted to quickly comment that my understanding of the intention of this task force is just what you said, that there are a lot of, it's very complex, very challenging work. And at the end of the day, victims are the ones that are being harmed. And so it's going to be a lot of work, and you all are the experts. But certainly that is my expectation, that it could be challenging, but there will be agreements put into an MOU that's at least workable. So I look forward to seeing that play out, everybody.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And since I jumped down to, again, I always welcome feedback. So since I jumped down to Oh, was there anything, Megan, you did check your email, anything relating to Jane's hand that you wanted to raise before we moved on?
I did just forward, I just wanted to clarify that Jane is a confidential attendee, and it looks like she was forwarded again the invitation to her email, so.
Okay.
No, Kelsey
Jane-
had forwarded it to me. It's just my name is on there.
Yeah,
I'm
Jane
Hoping no one
sent
else
me,
can see that.
yeah, Jane, you asked me to forward you the link. And so, so I did. And so, you know, if that then ended up somewhere it shouldn't have, I apologize. I followed your
It was not you.
request.
It's not you. It's my
Okay.
name that's on it. It says my actual name, not Jane Doe.
Okay.
That's the problem. Not you.
I think that might be an Outlook function, because I know that if a meeting notification is forwarded, then I think that the name automatically gets added. So I can check in with our ADS team, Digital Services, to see if there's any way to change that. But I think that that's an automatic kind of function of the email software that we use, unfortunately. But I will
Yeah.
certainly follow up with folks and see if we can change that.
I
It
think
might
if
be
we,
easiest. Sorry,
I
just
think
to
if we
send the link
copy and
maybe?
paste, yeah, I was gonna say, I have been copying and pasting the link, which seems to get around it. Instead of just forwarding the invitation, if you copy and paste the link and forward it, then I think that that doesn't appear.
Okay. So I'm
Yeah,
happy to, go ahead, Jen.
No, sorry, I was going to say that I do the same thing in my work in that circumstance. I'll admit it was last minute. We were in the meeting and I didn't think of it. I just forwarded it. So, but yeah, I think copying pasting avoids that issue. And I do apologize, Jane, that happened.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I don't know if everyone else in this meeting can see that or not. That's the only thing that or if it's just me that can see the name.
No, I think it appears in the invitation retroactively.
So does that mean everyone else can see it or just me? I'm sorry. I'm like really bad with this kind of stuff.
Let me look.
I've
Okay.
never seen your actual name.
No, I can't see it when I open the link.
If it's helpful, I know that I forwarded just the occurrence, not the series. So that would mean that it would potentially pop up on just this particular
Yeah,
meeting.
no, it wasn't anything you did, Kelsey. You did perfect.
No,
Thank you.
I am the
appreciate
reason that it happened, actually. But
I
if
just
you
was
ask
like, I
me,
can see my name. I don't know, because they've leaked it a couple times already. So
well, I think maybe we've all heard that if you need it sent again, any one of us will copy and paste to
Yep.
avoid that. Yeah.
I think that should work because I think it did work last time, Jane, right? When I initially forwarded the first meeting.
yeah,
Yeah.
it said Jane Doe on it. Yep.
Okay, because we made that mistake the first time also, and then I think it ended up on the list. But okay, moving forward, we will be more cautious and maybe I can test it with you, Jen, or somebody.
Sorry,
Okay, or we
I
can
got a
just,
little panicky. I'm sorry. I saw my
That's
name. and I was like, wait
okay.
a second. That's not. That shouldn't be there. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
No need
well,
to
we can
apologize.
also just add to you, Megan, and just trust that you know how to do this. So we will not reach out to
Yeah.
Jane and just trust that she's in the loop. And no, there's no reason for apologizing. Your contributions are so valued and important, and we'll get this right. And you know, do whatever we can to keep you safe. So moving on, I'm just going to stick with the ongoing updates for now and put Joe on the spot to see if there's any other pieces that he, you know, had conversations with in terms of the DOC Vine work group that's happening parallel to this process. And I know there were some pieces that came up during our last meeting and whether or not, again, that even group has even met since we did meet.
Yeah, we have a technical group meeting, and we met yesterday. So we're at kind of the beginning stages of doing kind of a technical analysis of revamping the Vine notifications, not specifically the scenarios in which notifications go out, just the way that we kick off notifications using our data. We have started a testing protocol so that as Vine does their development, we will be able to test in parallel with the live system to ensure that what we move to has a superior quality. And that's really what our focus has been lately.
And by kickoff notifications, you mean like those trigger codes that result in the actual notifications, not so much
Exactly.
the verbiage and all of that, but again, the trigger codes and training around that.
Exactly. Yep.
How often do you meet? Just curious.
Bi-weekly. That's our kind of technical group. I'm not sure if Meredith, I'm not sure if you have other meetings with Vine on a different schedule.
Yeah, we meet about weekly too.
Meredith, do you have any updates in terms of those meetings that would have a relevance to our conversations in terms of the notification group?
No, I think that one thing to highlight is something that Anna sent out, and that's the new and you included that document. It's the new feature Vine has with the 911 system. And I think Al took the webinar on that, and I think he talked a little bit about that as well.
Yes, I did see that and share that. And, I'd be interested if I have some feedback, but, I'm just a member and be interested if other people have feedback. And I see, Amy, you took yourself off mute, so I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to that pretty carefully in the last meeting. I know internally from the agency that I work with that already, like, there are flags coming up in my head. Just because of the capacity of our current 911 system, what their focus is, and that the fact that they are not victim services people. And I don't want to take a lot of time away because I do want to look at some of the things that are in front of us and not kind of create problems and things that we haven't created yet. But that to me already seems like there's that direction would have to involve some more people that I think would make some what I believe to be some probably objections to that. And I just want to, as I was sitting here, I was thinking when I was talking about earlier, one of the things that to be clear about when I was talking about these two arraignments earlier, it's not that Megan, although she is like gold standard for advocacy, that the other advocate was not. It's just that that other advocate had a hearing back to back with a lot of other victims there and had handed someone the pamphlet. And when I spoke to this person, and I only happened to be at the arraignment, and said, okay, so this is how you get notified. Do you want to talk about that? And she just kind of handed the pamphlet to me and said, I just don't even know what this is. And so that overwhelm was what was so clear to me in that moment. And I think similarly, that kind of human victim service kind of outreach is so important. And I don't think 911 is that. So those are just my thoughts on the 911, not to like totally shoot it down, Meredith. And I read about it and I heard Al talking about it last week, but I can't see how that works in my head. So I'm just.
No, I
sorry to
totally
waste
get
time.
that. No, I totally get that, Amy. And I haven't spoken to other states to see how that's working, or other victim services folks. So, that is something I would want to do as well. I just wanted to put it out there that other states are using that, and I'm not sure how it's working, but I do want to find out more information.
Just so you know, like even activating our own victim services unit within Vermont State Police, we're told that that is too much of a burden on 911. So that is the current state of that system. And I just cannot imagine that they would be open to doing victim notification.
I just want to add in, and I won't take up too much time, but to add to the list of not good experiences, I firmly believe dispatch departments across the board need more trauma-informed training. They have a lot on their plate. They have a specific role, and they're answering the calls. So to add something like this on, maybe that will unfold, but they need more training. Thank you.
And I agree. A few years ago or several years ago, a senator was sexually assaulted, and she let me know. And she was like, dispatch treated me horribly. And she was powerful, and she said they need to be trained. This is, she's like, I was re-traumatized. And she's a tough cookie on the outside. So she was just aghast at how she was treated and tried to move this issue forward. And there was extreme pushback from dispatch that was not their role. They were not there to do, trauma-informed response. They were there to just farm out, what that would be. So I do think it's, in an ideal world, that would be great. But just when a senator has that happen and is bringing that to her colleagues, and they're still saying like, no, it's not happening. That's going to be that would be a big fight.
Yeah, and I want to say I had pretty horrible experience both over the phone and a walk-in in-person experience. My phone was taken and I showed up in person, and that's on the list of pretty terrible stories.
Well, another parking lot thing that we can address in future times, but we are actually making progress. We did get through a couple of things on the agenda. As far as I mentioned, I think that the notification language that we've received, there's been a bunch, and Ashley was kind enough to provide the first round back on July 7th, and really do want to think about the forms. I think that's one of those pieces that I know Kelsey, Jane, the SA advocates have spoken about. I have, in terms of like what that language looks like, and trying to make that more victim sensitive, something that provides resources, speaks in personal tones versus blank spaces. And my thought was that, and I know Meredith just sent out some things too as well yesterday, so thank you very much. Whether it makes sense to try and tackle that today, or as I mentioned in the email, if we just want to kind of devote a meeting to having some time to digest these pieces. I, have been including Disability Rights Vermont. I think Tracy may be here on those pieces, because I think, again, looking at that language from their lens, and so it's on the agenda again as a placeholder, but whether we think it's worth talking about now or worth kind of digesting a little bit and coming prepared to like really get into the weeds next meeting. So I'm looking for feedback.
Jen, I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure I understand. When you refer to the forms, what are you referring to?
To the actual notifications that go out to victims.
Okay, so like the text copy of the notifications. Okay. I personally think it would be nice to maybe like take some time offline to review. I'd be happy to like go through and provide feedback into a Word document that we then kind of bring back. Maybe there are opportunities for revisions outside of the meeting to save us some time. But I'm easy.
I think that was where I was thinking, if we could spend some time before the next meeting to reach out to, folks that we think might have some feedback and kind of compile those pieces in advance of next meeting so that we could all look at that and really be productive in terms of giving more, detailed specifics about how these forms could be improved. I know, Kelsey, I'm thinking the advisory council that we have at the center. I'm sure that, the advocates as a whole would like to look at it. And I'm sure that maybe the BSSs might have some good ideas too. So I just want to have everybody have a chance to think about how we could do this. And I do like your suggestion, Charlie, very much.
May I ask a clarifying question? Now, and this is response to both the forms that are provided pre-adjudication and post-adjudication. So we'd be looking at that singular page as well for feedback and just offer all of that, or are we, and I agree with Charlie on providing it in through written, just because then we can take it back to our operations, how we institute and work on our own Department of Corrections operations piece. Versus, just a rapid fire feedback, just so that we're able to digest it and take that into consideration. But again, is that just for clarifying what specific? We have the VIDE notifications. We have, I think you had sent out the is it the court product sheet also that we're looking at?
That's, you mean what Anna sent out?
Oh, no, I think in your original one sent earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, you had said it was that specific court one where we talked about incorporating VIDE language. Are we looking at that as well?
I'm only sending out what I've been provided. So I think if it exists, then I think we should take a look at it. But I don't know if there are other forms that are being used so I'm sorry, Cassidy. I'll have to.
Cassidy, are you speaking about the Your Rights as a Victim of Crime in Vermont handout?
Oh yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Oh. I wasn't. No, we'll get to that one next. It's still on the agenda.
Okay, so you're only off. So this would be only specific to post-adjudication Department of Corrections notifications. Just to be clear, we're not looking at anything else.
Not for this purpose, because again, I'm responding to what Ashley sent out and appreciate that. And then, some of the other pieces that Meredith had sent out and just looking at that, because that was one of the main areas where survivors and, as I recall, state attorneys advocates were saying that there were ways that we could do things in a different manner in terms of how the letters are, composed. Again, accessibility, understandability, and again, that trauma-informed piece. So that, again, responding to what Ashley had sent out, which we haven't had a chance to look at, would be helpful.
Yeah, I would refer to the more updated version that you had initially sent out for in receipt. We understand and know and acknowledge that the language needs to be updated. I mean, it doesn't even reflect, it still says offender. So obviously not reflecting the newest language, but in having that in receipt written would be better, I think, for Department of Corrections to look at the totality of the impacts of that language.
And Ashley's language that she sent out then on July 7th is the current language.
That's the current language, and we're proposing the newer language that Meredith sent out.
Oh, okay.
As the first revision, or like first draft of revision. Because we're gonna have, I think, based on feedback specifically from, people who are impacted, to how we can update it. But I see Isaac's hand. He might be better at explaining it more than myself.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to change the subject. I have to run in a few minutes. And Jen and Tim, just wanted to kick it over to you for a quick agenda item about the upcoming Joint Justice Oversight hearing on Tuesday. I know we have an hour set aside for testimony on victim notification, so just wanted to see if we could add that really quickly before 10 and 1 I have to drop.
Sure, that's fine. But I see Amy's hand is up, so before we briefly shift gears, want to make sure Amy, you're muted.
Sorry, just curious about these scripts and looking at the language. Are these the same, like, are there different scripts for juvenile offenders? Do we do like, is it the same kind of language for both?
We don't do notifications for juvenile offenders.
Oh. Oh, okay. All right, well, maybe we can talk about that at some point.
All right, so I'm sensing that, Meredith, I could just get some clarification from you, make sure that I have like the most recent form because this is admittedly confusing for me, the most recent verbiage, and get that out to folks, and we'll agree that people have a little bit of homework and to start sharing that with the goal that we can at least make sure that we provide some sort of written feedback prior to the next meeting. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm seeing nods and no thumbs down. So Isaac, I know you have to go, so we can squeeze this in. Did you have okay.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. And sorry I have to run. Was just kind of curious to hear, Tim and Jen, kind of what you were thinking of sharing at that. And, I'll be in the room. I'm not sure if anyone else from DOC will be there, but always helpful, I think, just to kind of align and get a sense, for what the committee might be thinking about.
I know I asked the committee assistant, I said, we basically just got started, so there's really nothing. And she said, well, the chair was just looking for, to me, what she said the chair was looking for was more of an education about like what this issue is. Because as you know, from joint legislative oversight, there's people who have zero clue about the world that we live in, just a little bit too much during the session. So that's going to be my plan. I'm just going to basically talk about what got us here and what we're working on, and thank them for pulling the group together, and where we hope to land when our report's due on November 15th. So that was my piece. I didn't understand why we had to do this so soon. So
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to say yet. I have 28 elected bosses. None of them are on this call. So I never like to overpromise and underdeliver to people that I don't work for. That said, I probably plan on continuing to say that we needed a better system of coordinating, handing off, and we're in the process of doing that work now. Just like when they asked us in when the bail law was like 2 weeks old, and I told then Dick Sears, it's a little too early to tell. I have to echo some of what Jen said in that we'll see, right? I mean, like I made a request 2 minutes before this meeting started. If that request is acted upon, that's great for me between now and next week. And I think that it will be based on the people that I know that I really respect who are working at DOC. If it's ignored or not acted upon, then I have to say that. And I don't think it will be, for the record. I think you all care about the issue, but and we all deal with crisis situations every day, but it's more, I'm trying to make Al's life as miserable as possible before he retires. No, it's really, I have to be transparent because that group in particular, they're not in the thick of the legislative process right now. And so summer vacation and back to school and all the different things. They're not really as in the thick of the issue. And so depending on how it goes with Jen, and like, I think the way I've always seen joint justice is this nice open forum in some ways. You know, like they'll pop over, you know, if Isaac and Haley are in the room, for the folks that aren't familiar with it, they'll be like, Isaac, so is that going on right now? And that's a really fluid piece that I like about joint justice during the summer. But I also am talking with the chair of our executive committee of sheriffs and state's attorneys before then. And, you know, it'll depend on what they direct me to do over there. But from my perspective, you know, as Megan knows and as Karen knows, I could have said, hey, one of the victim advocates deal with this task force. You know, we have a lot going on this summer, but I truly care about the issues. So my hope is that we can all say that we're making progress towards better coordination, better communication when there are changes. It is hard when some of the stuff of the last month, even when this task force is happening, have occurred. But I'm putting that aside for a minute, in part because I want to echo the frustration I've heard from the victim advocates, and I don't want them to feel that I'm not representing their interests. So I'll probably have to say there's ongoing frustration, and I want everyone to be aware of the fact that I'm going to say that word, but we're also meeting on a regular basis and working to come up with solutions in a shared document. So ongoing frustration, but we're all working together, and that's really the key, in my opinion. You know, it's not like Meredith and I took a 2-month vacation when this task force started. You know, we're here talking through stuff, but I have to, my experts are Karen, Megan, Tammy Loveland, Holly Leach, people in the field that tell me how it's going for them. So that's my barometer for how things are going. And I have to stick to that for me to do my job. I hope that's helpful, Isaac. Probably TMI.
No, that's really helpful. And I understand, you know, it's like we all answer different constituencies,
Yeah.
right? And that's Vermont. So that's good to know. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Any
Cool.
other
Thank you,
questions
Jen.
about that? Okay. Yeah, I knew you'd be in the room. I saw your name. I was like, yeah, well, we'll all be well behaved, but we'll report as best as we can. And, you know, again, I think it's just one of those pieces. I agree with Tim. I like their fluid discussion, and I think that'll just be important. And we are all in the room, and we are going to come out with something you know, in November, that's going to give them a path forward for helping us. And it is going to include some resources that I assume we're going to need. And I expect that question will come up, but we haven't identified those yet. That's another task. But I think being transparent that some of the asks or recommendations are going to also include some additional support that is needed.
Yeah. And just for folks on the call, I think people are aware of this. Really, the kind of this whole conversation actually stems out of work in House Corrections and Institutions that then got booted over to Joint Justice Oversight maybe a year or two ago around the expansion of earned time for education, like called learned time. And Tim, I've been meaning to catch up with you based on some comments from Jay about maybe some kind of proposals from the 5th floor on where they'd like to go on some of that. So we should catch up maybe on Tuesday if you have a moment. But you know, really, I think this is kind of stemming out of that conversation and some currents that we might see in the upcoming session. So we can connect on that.
Just gonna say, I'm over here and I was the one that had that language put in with the learn time. So if there's any proposals coming from the 5th floor, please include me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, well, thank you. And thanks for joining us today, Isaac. All right, so we did mention the law enforcement forum. So it feels maybe we should just kind of touch upon that, even though we're going, again, I promised you we were going to go out of order, but I'm trying to kind of work off of where the conversation was. And just being real clear that that's not a Vine forum, that's a forum that was developed to help law enforcement meet their obligations per statute. And the revised version or the new version was developed a couple of years ago in conjunction with state police and the State's Attorney's Advocates and others. Disability Rights took a long look at the form, the first form. Their head exploded, my head exploded, everybody's did. So this was the revised form that is able to be populated from what we were told from VSP, that troopers like print forms out in their cars, and this would allow them to, put pieces in place. And so since the conversation, the past couple of meetings has spoken about, law enforcement's role, I did revisit that form. And so a couple of things came up.
Jen, I think you're muted.
This whole time muted?
No,
Oh.
no.
I was like,
Just
oh
as
my
you were,
God.
yeah, I don't know how that happened. Just as you were about to start your comments, so I think we got most of what you said.
Oh, but just looking at the form, if people had feedback, again, it's been vetted quite a bit. But it doesn't include anything about vines. Is that, appropriate or not? And, again, we have Amy here, so that's really helpful. And then just getting some clarity around this whole gap between what's happening when somebody, is detained or lodged or held on bail. So, not to put you on blast, Amy, but just looking to get some of your initial impressions.
I think it would be perfect to add vines to this. I think it would be really appropriate. And again, a really just following the form of this, something really clear about how to sign up for vines, because it's not terribly difficult to do for someone. I think, as I understand the problem, if someone is brought to a facility and potentially released in the off hours or on the weekend, that there's not enough time for Vine to kick in for someone to get that notification. And sometimes because someone can be brought to a facility and kind of processed, and then someone's already waiting with bail at the front door. And so that seems to be a very big gap. And I don't know what that paperwork looks like when someone is brought into custody, but would it be, maybe this is terribly simple to say, this is a victim who should be notified if this person is released, and then whoever at the facility is involved in that release is able to facilitate that notification. At that point, I don't know that law enforcement always knows. I think it's reasonable to think they know sometimes, but they might have already moved on to another call. And why put in another person if there's someone there who knows that this person is walking out the door and can make that call before it happens? Is my thought on this.
So could you flesh out a little bit more about, like, in your head, how you see this actually happening in terms of, you said a form, like what would that look like?
Well, I don't know what that paperwork looks like, and I can talk to some of the troopers about that, but it seems like the hole in the system here is, if someone, like this says, law enforcement need to tell people if someone is taken into custody. So that is information that they need to provide someone. I think what is missing is who is informing them if the person is released from custody. And my understanding about Vine is that you could sign up for it right away, but in the amount of time that it needs to like catch up with systems like booking and release, which can happen really quickly, that there's not enough time for that to happen. And so one of the gaps is when someone is released fairly quickly because someone is able to post bail and they're being released from a facility. And someone who knows more about this than me, like, please jump in. But it just seems to me like in that space, there's nothing in the statute that is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it says DOC, but I don't know that that's happening.
Well, yeah, I think, Amy, I don't think it's that the system doesn't work fast enough. We've changed it so it sweeps every 15 minutes. The problem is, no one has the victim contact information to enter into Vine or to call somebody to tell them somebody's been released.
Well, that seems like kind of an easy fix. I mean, if someone wants to be notified, if there's an arrest made and someone is saying, I want to be notified, a victim is saying, I want to be notified. If Vine can catch up that quickly, I didn't think it could, but if it can catch up that quickly, we can make sure that people have access to Vine. But I also think it makes sense on the other end in, these kind of situations where it happens on the weekend, or, there aren't typically victim services people around, or I don't know. I mean, the gaps that are out there seem to be when these kind of immediate lodgings and people post bail, they happen very quickly and people don't know that someone has posted bail. So are you saying, Meredith, because I thought I heard in another meeting that it can take several hours, but it sounds like
No,
if
I
someone
mean,
signs up for Vine, that can
as
happen
soon as
quickly.
somebody's booked in, somebody can sign up for Vine. So, I can't speak to how long it takes to book somebody in and book somebody out. I can find out more information about that. But I think that, I mean, Megan and I, when we discussed this, it wasn't that many people. And so we thought we could figure out a solution if we could get the victim contact information. And if that's an easy fix, then I think I think we could make it happen.
One thing I was noticing about your form, would it be helpful to add, like, the individual was lodged at, in providing specifically the, which I know is monitored, is the number to the VS unit. You know what I mean? So whoever's monitoring that and the victim of record reaches out, like, that information is provided to them. Mind you, it's always open for human error, but the information, like, so if this individual, it just looks like if they're not lodged, like, it doesn't provide the information right up top, like, if they're lodged, they're at this facility, giving them an option to at least identify where they are at. So if that turnaround, like Amy, you're talking about, at least they have a number of, to talk to whoever's on shift that day. But it's those weekend ones that we're definitely missing. That is very much a gap in having that, at least offering that information to the individual if they choose to access it, which I don't see offered in this form for your rights as a victim.
So as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking about, including the Vines information for signing up, including, it could just be check, that, where they're lodged, are they lodged where, a VSS number, and whether the person wants to be notified. So just maybe a series of some, like a blank space that they can populate, and then some check boxes. But Amy's off mute, so I'm gonna see if I said something that doesn't work for them. But I think it does feel like an easy fix, and it feels like this was one area that they, again, were really concerned about. By they, I mean legislators.
To me, that seems like a no-brainer. It seems like that's not hard to fix here.
Is it something that the officer would have the victim's contact information and enter it or pass along that contact information? Or is it like a little card or something that they would give to victims saying, fill this out, or call this number so you can, if it's nights and weekends, so that you can be registered for Vines? Because a lot of times if people are registered or lodged, like, they haven't gotten to us yet, and they might not get to us for a couple of days if it's a night or weekend.
Yeah.
And they might bail out during that time. But like, so I think it would have to come from law enforcement if it hasn't gotten to us yet, unless officers routinely get a good phone number or email that then
Right.
someone from corrections could reach out to them to say,
are you registering so you'll know if they bail out?
I just want to quickly comment in here that as much as possible, please avoid putting the burden on the victim if they, just experienced significant trauma, giving them a card and saying, please call this number and set up Vine, especially if we're talking about eliminating the issue of short turnaround windows and weekends. It's very unlikely. And so I just want to lift that part up. I know this is really complicated, but please, can we not go in that direction? That's already not working.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking, Karen, like if someone says, if law enforcement is saying this person is going to be lodged, which is, they need to, that's their obligation to notify that. Do you want to be notified if they are, released over the weekend, let's say?
Yeah.
There's this Vine system, but also providing that person's name and number to the facility. There is a person who is releasing someone, like that person. And again, I don't know how corrections work. So if this is really not making sense, tell me. But like, is there not a way to communicate that on the paperwork that goes with the lodging?
Right.
Please contact this person if this person is released.
Amy, do you remember, or people who've been here a long time, there used to be like a paper version that either if it was us, we would do it, or if it was law enforcement, because it was a night or weekend, where it would have the victim contact information and it would get faxed over to the facility. You know what I mean? And so that they had that. And then, at that time there was no Vine. So it was like a phone call saying, just so you know, so-and-so has been released. But so an electronic version of that, is there a way to?
I'm assuming there's paperwork that goes with lodging. Like, how hard would it be to say, here is the name and number of the victim?
Right.
They would like to be notified.
I think, yes, I agree with you, Amy. I think there's some tricky things we're not thinking about maybe, because I feel like if it was that simple, we would have solved the problem. I think the issue sometimes is they don't necessarily get the paperwork. I don't know. I'll have to talk to the facility, but Megan, I don't know if you remember when we talked to Robin, if you could talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that. Yeah.
I think that my understanding at the time was that the information the facility was receiving did not always have that information included. I think it would be really helpful if we could pull together what law enforcement is providing to the facility at the time they're dropping off. Because I know, at least on the SA side, like sometimes, even though someone's been lodged over the weekend, we're not getting a lot of that information until 11 a.m., and the arraignment's at 1. So I think that the disconnect when I was at DOC and Meredith and I were working on this, and I know, Amy, we've met with you as well, was like, how do we ensure, there's so many different law enforcement agencies, how could we prioritize that? And in fairness to law enforcement, they are responding to usually a violent situation between people, and the priority is like getting that person into custody and getting them transported while someone else is doing, that piece with the victim survivor. And so the person doing the transport doesn't necessarily even have that information at the time. So it is a little bit of a logistical nightmare from, we kind of hoped that it would be something simpler, but it would be a big training piece, I think, with law enforcement agencies, just making sure, because I think that what we figured out with Robin, and it would have to be a booking officer training, but if we could assure that information is provided at booking, then I think on the other end, we could tighten up a process there, or at least that was the thinking a couple years ago. I don't know if anything shifted since then, but that felt like a heavy lift with the Criminal Justice Training Council, or like, how do we push it out to the chiefs? Like, it would have to be a really coordinated effort, and it really is probably the largest gap that we have just logistically speaking. Like, it's not a technical notification piece. It is just a very the most dangerous time for a survivor, and it is where the biggest gap exists. And again, as Meredith pointed out, we did identify that it's actually not that voluminous in terms of the number of people we're seeing, but it's the cases where lethality is high.
And in fairness, again, to law enforcement, there are reasons why we don't put victim name and numbers in that paperwork. And that is also a safety issue. So how is it that, again, I think it just seems like there should be a safe way to communicate that information to booking.
Yeah. And I think we talked a little bit about potentially, Megan and I talked a little bit about somebody having access to Valcor. The issue with that is not everyone uses Valcor. So, because I understand that's where the victim contact information goes.
Not necessarily. I don't think that would be a
Okay.
good fix.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and especially that early on, I don't think Valcor is going to have a complete case and case information in it. So I do think like this does come down to human.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about a simple fact pattern even caught on camera, where someone is assaulted somewhere, you sometimes have the defendant and the victim does not reveal themselves for a little while, but you see the crime, and then you don't, sometimes you may not even have good contact information or a name other than a nickname or a first name for the victim up until the moment of arraignment. And we're telling law enforcement like Megan and Karen are like, hey, do you have the real name of the victim? We've arrested them because they were observed committing a felony in downtown White River Junction in front of the bank, but where's the victim, right? I mean, and so, and in those cases, by the way, if we have it on video, we don't even necessarily need the victim to get the conviction as an aside. But we would need, that sometimes law enforcement takes a little while to get that good victim contact information. And then when they get us best available information, sometimes our victim advocates are still, oh, that's your mom's house? What's your number? You don't want your mom to get these to be involved in this matter? Great, we'll call your dad's cell phone and you're at dad's house on the weekend or something like that. So sometimes it's kind of a web. It's not, it'd be great if everyone just had, Google Lens of what their contact information is, and law enforcement could just collect it, but also it's specific and victims don't always want certain contact information to be used. So it's a moving piece of information, I think, even for our victim advocates, even at arraignment and after arraignment.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, we get a simple charging document that allows us to receive that individual. We don't get the affidavits, we don't get any information. So it's a simple end process with no information attached to it.
Yeah.
Well, I was hopeful, and now this is all bringing me down, but I think that we have a form that we can make changes to, at least, that I think, did not include this whole piece. I think, as one of you said, this is one of those things where the gap is, and I think it was you, Megan, the widest in terms of like not, again, communication, other pieces, but just like logistics. And it feels that there are ways to at least make the gap a little bit smaller. It's not going to be a perfect piece, but what can we identify in the roles that we each have to try and narrow that gap? I think the form's a good starting place, but again, learning a little bit more about what that handoff looks like. And, certainly we're not always going to have victim information, but obviously my head goes to a victim of domestic sexual violence who wants to know, I don't want this person showing up on my doorstep. And so how do we make sure that in those pieces where the victim is, whereas Megan said, not a lot, but the lethality is there. How can we try and again narrow that gap? And, willing to try and take a stab at the form on my end and, put that out there in advance of next meeting, just to kind of do some of the more low-hanging fruit pieces, again, making sure that we have Vine's info in there. And, Meredith, if you want to advise me as to how you think that should look, that would be great. But then again, talking with each of our respective groups to the extent that they're involved to say like, are there ways that we can, given the process, what's realistic on the communication and in terms of communicating that information. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me, Jen. Thank you. And also, not to push us down a slippery slope with the handout, but I do have some minor changes that I might suggest for the section about network member programs, and I'm happy to send that to you if that's helpful.
That's perfect. Yep, send it on. Didn't want to revise this whole form again, but you know, it's always living documents, right? We never have forms anymore. They're living documents.
Yeah, sorry, Jen. It felt like an opportunity and I had to take
No,
it.
it's perfect. If we're gonna go down this road and look at it again, let's just look at it again. And if Tracy's still on this call, then she's like, oh no, I gotta look at more stuff at disability rights. But well, before we move.
Jen, I just wanted to
Oh.
note, I just put in the chat, Jen Harlow is the president of the Sheriff's Association. If there's an updated form, I could work with our director of sheriff's operations to see, hey, what are you all doing with this? And, you know, some counties, they're more active in the law enforcement side than others. Right? And Orleans County is an active sheriff law enforcement enterprise. The Chiefs of Police Association, I can't remember who the current president is.
I forget. It's because Jen.
But
Jen,
James Pomprion was the just prior one, so he's on LEAB, so he might be a good person to start with. And I put his email in the chat.
Well, he was a
too.
former victim advocate. I've been around long enough to remember when he was the victim advocate in Orange County. Remember, Karen? You don't remember?
But he'd be a great one to talk to.
I remember.
He's very responsive. So
Okay.
James and Jen would be two good people to chat with. I mean, Amy's got all the troopers just covered every day, right? Amy, you can just see what they all think and what they're all doing consistently. But at least with the sheriffs, Jen can reach out, and the chiefs, it'll be interesting to see, you know, what's going on, particularly in the smaller agencies, small towns, you know, with one chief and one patrol person. It's going to be interesting to see what they're doing.
Well, I don't have Tums within reach right now. I'm going to go find them at the bio break that we're going to take. But the important thing is that this form was developed to help law enforcement officials to meet their obligations. And, you know, obviously it was easiest to have state police vet it, but it's there as a tool, it's there to help. And obviously it's there to help victims in the moment when they are just in the middle right of it. So I don't want this to be, it's an obligation, but the form is intended as a tool to help. So I welcome the feedback. And I will, you know, work with Meredith to kind of add some check boxes. Charlie will give me some feedback, and then, yeah, I guess we'll see what the universe has to say.
And no, I think that population, the sheriffs and the chiefs, will be pretty good at receiving a piece of information. They may not be very quick in terms of getting, oh, here's what we need, or here's what we're doing. So if you sent them something, they might say, great, here's a new form, we're going to start using it. Some of them are going to just do that because of the way that their operations are working. So that's why it's still good to coordinate everything through.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
And reality is if you send it to them, then they'll say, oh, okay, great. If I send it to them, it goes to the back of the bin. So, but yeah, your help in getting that out there will be helpful.
Yeah, if there's something you want us to push out, just let me know.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So this feels hopeful, and we can start to, again, narrow that gap. I know it's not going to be perfect. And I did share the statute insofar as just to highlight the fact that there is this gaping hole in terms of what happens during this process. So whether or not that might be tweaked at some point, I don't know, but I feel like we have a concrete starting point in terms of the form and in terms of understanding better what that handoff looks like in terms of paper information that is shared. And then, you know, I think, again, confidentiality concerns are important, but for victims that want that and that are in fear, that feels like a piece that we can tackle. Would people mind if we took like a 3-minute coffee refresh, bathroom break, and came back?
Sounds good.
All right, see you in like 3 minutes. If people are back, if you could just like put your thumbs up or put your camera on briefly, just so we know if we can proceed. Okay, I see. Tim, Charlie, Meredith, myself. Amy. Okay, I think we have enough people in terms, oh, and I see Kelsey. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. And actually, you know, I kind of went through the agenda. We're kind of on target because some of the things we jettisoned for later. So I'm feeling good about where we're at. And we do want to leave room for public comment, but I wanted to get back to number 3 on the agenda, which is kind of the only place that I see we didn't go other than the parking lot items. We talked about creating a chart that would kind of have this like sequential look at the system and where to help us kind of visualize where those gaps might be. I'm not sure if that made it to anybody's desktop in terms of working on that. So just wanted to see if that, if anybody has any information that I don't about that. I do think it would be a great tool, especially when we talk to the legislators, but certainly don't, again, expect that we are, you know, we're on a quick turnaround timeline. I, you know, completely understand. So just looking for any update or if we want to continue to hope that that will be something we can produce. Okay, so no updates. I know Jenna, the last meeting, had volunteered to take a stab at it. I don't know if Jenna's here, but, and I don't know if that's even realistic for her.
I
Oh,
am here.
oh, okay.
Hi, I'm just waiting for a few of the DOC folks and I to find some time to connect. It should be this week, and I will send something when I have an update.
Perfect, thank you. Again, I think especially with legislators, they really need to see these kinds of pieces because they don't live in this world. So if there's anything that you can offer to do, that's greatly appreciated. I see your hands up, Tim.
Yeah, are you just looking for like the life of the case? Or?
What we discussed in the last meeting was just that there are these different like intercept places where, you know, throughout the life of a case. So where notification could be happening, should be happening, and whose responsibility it is. So if that's something that you all have that you could help Jenna and DOC out with, that would be great.
I just want to talk a little bit about that. Sorry, I didn't realize what you were talking about, Jen. So the document that Anna was referring to, I don't know if you remember, but when we had our first initial Vine relaunch, we had that big poster that we handmade along the wall that just talked about the possible intercepts where Vine could be utilized, but isn't necessarily being utilized. So that's I don't have that in electronic form. We just have it on really just a big poster we made.
Okay, so that's something, and I think that's where Jenna raised her hand when she said, I know how to do this. I know how to make it fancy.
Yeah.
So if that's something that, you know, Tim, if you have something you want to share, but again,
Yeah,
I just think that would be helpful for people to see. And when I say people, I mean the people that we try to educate and interface with, and also for us to see as well, like, okay, this is real clear and who's doing what, and, you know, where are the places where nobody is responsible for anything.
I mean, if you want, I can share my screen. I have something that I have used.
Just want to say, Meredith, the document that Anna put together, she created from your big poster. And I believe she sent it to Jenna also. So just to save some time on maybe not redoing that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did you want to share your screen, Tim? And if so,
Yeah.
and you're counting on me to help you, I have no
No, I'm
clue.
not. I know you, Jen. I know your skills, and I'm not going to rely on you for that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So I mean, this is something that there's some like different ways to talk about this, but you know, offense, arrest, charge is a funny word because, you know, an officer sends their suggested charges to a state's attorney or the AG, and then the prosecutor makes the ultimate call, which is why, you know, I put the filing by SA or AG right up here, but there's sort of like, that's that overlap. And then arraignment, pretrial stuff, right? It could mean a lot of stuff. Could be a deposition. There's not always depositions. Certainly in misdemeanors, they're not presumptively part of the situation. Change of plea or, you know, plea agreement, 99% of cases, or dismissal, not included in there, but that's the disposition. I could just say disposition in some form, right? Trial in 1 to 2% of cases. Sentencing, maybe there's PCR for someone who's incarcerated and sentenced to a term of incarceration. Appeal, in a lot of our more serious cases, there's an appeal. And then for some of our less serious cases, there's often a petition for sealing. Previously, a petition for expungement because of the law this year will be mostly sealing issues, except for deferreds. But this is, you know, kind of the landscape. I know people talk about it in intercepts, which I think sometimes makes it feel like it's all discrete phases. In my opinion, it's quite a bit of melding that happens, particularly when people pick up new charges or file appeals and violate probation. And then that's the other thing, right? I didn't put on here, but I should have, right? Potential for a VOP if they're on probation. So I could update this a little bit and send it around. It certainly doesn't look pretty, but you know, someone can make it look nicer than this.
I think that would be helpful, Tim, if somebody could, you know, obviously in your shop, help you with that, because Cassidy raised some good points last meeting in terms of like furlough and all these other different pieces that, you know, implicate, you know, victims in terms of what they would like to know or need to know. So I think you know, it helps. I'm a visual person, so it helps to see all this laid out.
Yeah. And there's all a bunch of stuff that can happen all at once, just why it's sometimes a little melding, right? You know, say someone picks up a new charge inside of a facility, which happens not infrequently, and then they're appealing why they're there and they get out and they're on supervision. What is that supervision? Parole, like you said, parole, furlough, probation. If it's a misdemeanor, they have a, you know, defense attorney that cares, they might file a sealing petition at some point. So there's all sorts of stuff, but yeah, I'm happy to just send it around to the group to kind of make it look nice and capture all the different pieces. This is when we're talking with VAs. We sometimes that are new. We sometimes talk about these pieces. So yeah, I'm happy to send it around. It's certainly just one.
I have a much more complicated version of this that I did for the VVAA when I was at corrections. And Jenna and I did a training just about the continuum, which does have a lot more of the corrections pieces on it, but it is a lot more complicated.
This is kind of VA, SAVA like centric, obviously, because that's why I had it. But I'll send it to whoever wants to make it look pretty. We'll make it look better anyway. I'll send it to you, Jen, or you can send it to whoever you want as the chair.
Please, Jenna, please help. Meredith, you had something you were going to say?
Yeah, I was looking at that training actually yesterday, Megan, that you did, and we are going to use some of that in when I talk to Jenna, I'll have her look at that document too, because I think it's very useful to talk about the continuum. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. I was gonna say, I think it's saved. I have it because it was like a Google Doc that we created, but I think it's saved on the shared drive for the VSSs as well. So.
And did it have citation on there as well? And like, do people have the understanding of, because that is really confusing to victims sometimes, especially when it gets set far out, you know, and understanding. Well, it's hard to understand, and it's frustrating for victims to call here and not understand why, like, we don't even have any information about it.
I
Or
know
they don't.
in Megan's document, Karen, she talks a lot about how long the process could take and why it takes so long. So
Okay.
it's pretty detailed.
It breaks
mean,
it
I don't-
down into phases. So it doesn't specify a citation, but it does break out, like a crime occurs, it's reported and observed, there's an investigation. It even has like pieces where it's like not solved, no arrest is made, and then it's like an arrest is made. Sometimes they're released without prosecution, sometimes a charge is filed. So it literally breaks down and it goes into juvenile offenders and then prosecution and pretrial services like diversion. It's like it's a much more complex
Okay.
document, which I mean, I think speaks to how confusing it is. And then the training itself goes through each phase where I then talked about
Yeah.
like some of those pieces. And sorry, I missed the beginning of this because I was distracted by people in my office, but so I don't know if this, hopefully that's relevant to what we're actually talking about.
And also adding like good time as well. I don't know if that's in there, but also like educating people on them getting good time and potentially getting released early and all of that.
That actually was one piece I wanted to quickly touch on. So thanks, Jane, for mentioning that. It came up last meeting, Meredith, that you weren't at, but I think it was Kelsey who had mentioned that, like, what's, in terms of earned time notification. And I mentioned that your department had graciously wanted to have that personal contact in terms of those pieces. So I don't know if you have a minute or two to just kind of update where that's at and how that process has, rolled out, if you've had a chance in terms of letting victims of crime know, especially of listed crimes, obviously.
Well, we did not send out like a notification, if that's what you're asking. My hope was that, when it's discussed before sentencing, that maybe the state's attorneys, victims advocates could just let folks know, if possible, that we can give them updates on that. Also, we're telling victims when they are contacting us or working with us that we are able to do that. We haven't had any request yet to do that, but if anyone has suggestions or
You haven't had any
thoughts,
requests to do what?
we haven't had any requests for folks wanting to get earned time monthly.
Well,
Well,
I'm aware of times where we've sought what the calculation would be. You mean on a monthly basis or in general? Because I'm aware.
No,
of,
a monthly basis.
Well, the
okay.
change in statute was no less than every 90 days to mirror what
Right, 90
the
days, yeah.
obligation is for offenders. So, if people, I guess maybe this is again kind of going back to what Tim was saying, if there's an understanding that the SA advocates would be communicating that up front, that would be helpful to know for them, because this is a change to law and a change to process for DOC in terms of having that obligation if a victim so requests. So,
Right.
so maybe that's just an offline conversation to figure out how to make sure victims are aware of that ability to have that personal connection with your unit.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we mention during handoff or when we send out our initial letter. But I think we could work with the state's attorney to figure out if maybe it should be mentioned when they talk about earned time before sentencing. So I can work with Megan or whoever around that too to see what we think might be best. Or Tim or whoever would like to.
Are letters going out to all all survivors where they're the person who caused harm is incarcerated?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's if we have the information and want to point out, like, that's not just the unit's responsibility. It would be, this is an operational change, meaning that we need to ensure, which we're working towards, is educating both the staff who have that direct contact to include the CSSs and the PPOs, which again, leaning into that MOU and those working relationships that are already in place. I know there's conversations happening around that earn time, especially when it comes to those violent listed offenses.
Yeah, whatever
it's
you want
helpful.
us to be aware of that you are doing, feel free to let me know, and I can, like, for example, we are now doing this. That whenever you have that moment, that we're someone we were working with and now you're working with, so we can tell them what they can expect. Just think of me in your brain and send me whatever, if it's the form that you're gonna send them or the letter, that, and you're okay with us sending it, hey, victim advocates, DOC is sending this out to individuals who, I'm just gonna use the old, but individuals who've been convicted, who had victims involved in their cases, and that way we can say, hey, you might receive this letter if the person is sentenced, and then they get incarcerated pursuant to the judge imposing a sentence. That way they're like, oh, that's what that is. And we can definitely send that out. That's super easy. And we meet almost monthly. We haven't, the summer's been hard, but in the summer we don't meet monthly, but we can say, hey, update, this DOC is sending us out now pursuant to this change. Likewise on those Vines changes, a brief could be something as simple as an email that you don't mind being forwarded. That sort of thing, knowing that I want to use whatever language you're going to be using so that I'm not miscommunicating it out there. And I'm being a little protective of Megan in part because, she is with one office, and I don't compensate her to be our victim advocate supervisor, despite the fact that she sometimes is treated that way. Likewise with Karen and others that show up. It's like the folks that actually show up to these things, stuff gets thrown on their plates, and they're great and are the experts. So I would work with them to make sure we're getting it out there, but also to the state's attorneys too, right? Because they're at the grocery store, right? And hey, what's going on with this new thing? Oh, right. And so making sure the whole office is aware of it. And our sheriffs too, who are also locally elected folks, just making sure the whole family tree of SAS is aware of it. Helps you all with your jobs, I think, in terms of it not feeling like a mystical Waterbury decision. I'm saying that because AHS is located there, not because just BOC. Sometimes there's a mysticism about Waterbury, and there doesn't need to be, just like about Montpelier. So demystifying what is happening in government will help with our folks. And yeah, consider me your forward person. I'll just forward it out.
Well, and I think it would be, circling back to the MOU, I think it would be helpful if part of that communication was clarity about how you guys are getting the information, because I know obviously we have practices in certain counties where information is shared with certain people. It is harder for me to know who to share with when somebody is incarcerated. So is it just people who are registered in, it sounds like this is an active shift that's happening, but would it just be folks registered in Vine that would be getting that letter, or would somebody from the facility be reaching out to the state's attorney advocates for that information, or what would that look like?
Well, for now, it's once somebody's sentenced, we will send them a letter with information. But we have to get the information from you guys, obviously.
Okay, is that proactively happening, or is there how is that information being exchanged? Because I personally email
I
my
know.
own PO offices, but when
Yeah.
somebody is sentenced to an incarcerated sentence, it's harder for me. I mean, I just encourage them to register for Vine, and I might send the info to Claudia if I think that they won't. But again, that's sort of just a practice that
I
I
know.
developed kind of on both ends when I was at DOC and when I was here. I don't think it's at all formalized, and I understand that there has been pushback around capacity for that. So
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Megan. It's different in every region and I think this is why that MOU is going to be so important. But yeah, there's not a standard way because
Okay.
you do it differently in your county than other folks do it. So yeah, I think it's a process.
Kelsey
just
has her
wanna-
hand up, and I think Jane had her hand up as well. I want to acknowledge that. I don't know if she still wants to chat, but.
Yeah, I have a quick comment, and then I was also going to lift up Jane's hand as well. I just want to mention, you all are talking about it. I want to say that just this last week, a victim reached out to me. This isn't through my, day job professional capacity, but just I have people reach out to me sometimes. And the supervised individual has been on probation for a few years and just was recently convicted of another crime, the same victim of record, and this victim has never heard from Victim Services or the PO, didn't know who the PO was. I reached out to Mike Aris, Windsor and Windham County Director, and he got right on it. So, the explanation there was they didn't have the contact information. And so it's that same circle of like, where's the ball being dropped? And I love that Megan reaches out and sends it, but that is not happening standard, statewide, or even I would say, even within every county that's always happening. And then I definitely know there are certain POs that will take the extra step and seek out the contact information. And I would say, in terms of, maybe domestic and sexual violence, the POs that I've had the opportunity to talk to that specialize in those cases and understand the complexities and the risks, they're maybe more likely to reach out and get it. But also this should apply to any victim of crime. So I just want to say this consistency, love that Megan does that, not happening all the time, continues to be an issue. Thanks.
Jane, did you still want to comment? I saw your thumbs up, but I don't know, your hand was
Yeah.
up, so.
I just was saying, like with the Vine updating, the with the earned time and stuff like that, Vine is still not updated to the correct times. And it says that they have a minimum sentence of, like, in my case, it says March of 2026 is the minimum release date, but he has earned time. So I don't know if that's possible to update even on Vine saying, hey, well, but with earned time, it'll be actually November 1st of this year.
Well, that's a good question, and I'll make sure Joe's still on, but when there was a presentation a little bit ago, that information is supposed to be included, but again, I think the change that was made to the laws that went into effect on July 1st was an agreed upon change wherein DOC was willing to do this without having additional pieces changed in the Vine system. So I think that conversation between DOC and the advocates, and then also I just want to say, if victims don't know they have, and survivors don't know that this is available to them, if they don't ask, I don't want that to be used as a reason that we don't do it. I mean, I know that it's been stated that nobody's asked, but nobody knows. So I want to really have the burden on us to make sure that we are providing that information, like, hey, you can now do that. And however that looks, and whoever does that, that sounds like that's a MOU issue. But, for me, I felt it was an important change that reflects what I was hearing from the survivors that contact me. So I really want to make sure that that information is getting into the hands of people who really want that and want that personal connection.
Right, and before we do an
Yeah,
MOU,
'cause if it
it
wasn't
should
for
just be,
Megan-
oh, sorry, Jane.
I'm just saying, if it wasn't for Megan, I wouldn't know that he would even be out November 1st of this year. I would just go off Vine and say, oh, he's not released until next year. So I'm fine until next year. And then him come kick my door in or whatever. Like, it's just a safety issue for my case personally. And it's happened before numerous times with Vine, not notifying people that do want to be notified. I understand there is some that don't want to be notified, but the people that do want to be notified, because I'm in a different state now, it's Megan has a lot on her plate. and I know that, but if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have even known that he was getting out on good time at November 1st of this year instead of next year, because Vine says minimum release date is March of 2026, and that he's going to be supervised, which he's not. So there's just a couple gaps there with Vine as well.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking about like the data piece, you know, Jane, to your point is if in County X, let's use Windsor as an example, we know that these people related to Windsor County cases are incarcerated. Maybe presuming that all the victims would want that information, sending it over to that office. Hey, here's the good time calculations for the people with Windsor County cases. And I don't know if that's super complex. That's one thing. And if you don't have the person power for it. But I agree with Jen, sort of not waiting for an MOU or some sort of agreement, sort of just making sure people know through all means necessary, using our human being behaviors that we all, you know, interacting with the person at sentencing, interacting with the person upon the first phone call, law enforcement knowing it, conversations that can happen with Charlie's organizations. Hey, just so you know, that sort of just so you know stuff can't be said enough. And I always try to send, like we have monthly requirements in our department for certain things, and I have a monthly reminder that I, send this out, so that I know people are busy, and I think that's part of the underlying thing here, where people are very busy, but not presuming that we can't do a lot to, throw everything at informing more people about what they can access now. Because I presume more people do want it. There's a reason I said it, Mary, because I know there was couple cases where I was like, just reach out to DOC, because DOC provided a great training like during 2021. Hey, we can do this calculation for you. And I've always referred back to that a number of occasions, that it is something DOC can do, and victims need to be aware of that information access point. And yes, feel free to send me whatever you want. I can let our victim advocates know about that for sure, so they can get that information to folks as much as possible.
Joe,
and
maybe.
Oh,
Sorry, go
Mary.
ahead, Charlie.
I just wanted to note that I mentioned this last time as well, but that I'm more than happy to send any updates like these earn time letters or changes in Vine practices out to our member program, so they're aware and can communicate that to the survivors they work with.
Right. Joe, I don't know if you could just talk about where earn time is updated monthly. Just so folks know.
In Vine, you mean?
And well, anywhere. Because we give in our Vine notification, we give a link to offender locator.
Okay. I'll have to research that. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's not in there. I have never seen it using Vine. I've never seen it.
I will say, it's been some years now since I was connected with Vine, and my offender, did benefit from the good time. And so while I didn't get on the system and look at whether his release date was changed in the Vine system, I did get the notification that he was going to be released. And I got a call from the PO. So I guess the only concern there would be, if somebody had no idea about the good time and then it was just a quick notification, the shock there. But I just want to say that, there is that notification they're being released, even if the date has changed, which could be shocking.
Mm-hmm. And there's two pieces though. There's what Vine does, but now with the change in law, what DOC is obligated to do. So I just want to be clear on what the understanding is and how we're rolling this out for victims and survivors.
I think it would be helpful to know what the policies are like in practice versus, you know, I know that when we're talking with victims, we talk about good time, and we also talk about how they could lose good time if there's like a major DR. But we've had multiple cases in serious, you know, domestics where a major DR has occurred, but corrections has said they don't have the time or staff to like file it or do whatever needs to happen. And so they don't lose their good time, and victims feel betrayed by that. And so, you know, in their mind, some victims are like following it month by month, like, you know, like to figure out when the release might be. And so I know like the advocates in our office have talked about just wanting to give people accurate information. So they're, you know, because we have a relationship with them, and sometimes they're coming back to us and saying, well, you told us, you know, that they have a right to good time, but that they could also lose good time. Why aren't they losing their good time? Or we're getting a really short, you know, they're being released in 2 days. You know, and so that can be a challenge because sometimes it's been several years. So just trying to find them if the numbers aren't still good in Just Where can be a challenge. And I didn't know if the lead time could be a little bit more than that. But I don't know how it works in corrections too. So I don't know what the limitations are for them.
Cassidy, you have your hand up, and then we probably have to wrap up because we're over and I need to make space for public comment. So
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up with these specific cases, how I feel like one of the gaps is the breakdown of reaching back out to the assigned probation officer, the assigned CSS, of that missing piece of why there's no communication, that there is a problem around that earned time or having that direct conversation with the people who are overseeing the case. I don't know if that's a gap or just something I'm not hearing in these examples that are being used, so that we can address it operationally. That's kind of how I'm looking at it, like, because there's policies and things that's set in place, but if we don't know about that specific case, we can't then address it. If it's, you know, going through the 7 stage, like, of problem solving, is this a policy? Is it a personnel issue? You know what I mean? Is there something in this that we can look at that's, you know, DOC has their policies. So we have some infrastructure set up that's been set up since I've been here since 2011 about contacts with victims. And I feel like in my position here, like the VSS, you would have come upstairs and talked to me personally and we would have problem solved it together. But I'm not hearing like that connection. But it continues to be generalized of no specific reach out to DOC to problem solve that. It's a policy, personnel, procedure, sentence comp.
I'd have to go back to see. We did reach out, and I think in a couple of them we ended up going like all the way up the chain, and I don't know, you know, what, you know, but we don't know who the chains are. Do you know what I mean? Like we contact who we know and they contact who should be contacted, and it kind of, you know, and then we end up on these emails with like 7 people on it. We don't always know. And they said like, oh, we missed the 30 days. Like, you have to understand we have all these other tasks, so we just didn't have time. So we've missed the window. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of been you know, there's conversations happening, but if that might be helpful for the state's attorney advocates to say like, no, don't contact whoever it is we're contacting, you know, and if that person that we should be contacting changes, like, hey, if there's an issue with earned time or with major DRs, contact this person. You know, I mean, I think sometimes we're talking to like the commissioners. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, like, you know, it's not like, you know, we're advocates are, you know, we're allowed.
Well,
these
are good points for helping to flesh out that meaty MOU that you guys are going to work on. So, but getting that, you know, that in order is really helpful and clear understanding. And again, wrapping in the changes to the laws that have happened around that are really important. So I can send out that specific change to the legislation if that would be helpful for folks. And I'll simply just do that. All right. Are there any members of the public who have any comments?
By the way, I see the signatories to the MOU being the people who are statutorily on this group in terms of who's going to sign it. So everyone that's that's the way I would view it, because I think it's gonna be a responsive deliverable in addition to any written stuff, Jen. I was just thinking, is everyone okay with that? Or are people just picturing it being state's attorneys and DOC? I mean, you know, Cassidy and I could get it done this afternoon. But if there's gonna be more parties, Cassidy and I will just clear our schedules, but if there's gonna be more parties like interested in what's in there, and I think there should be, the way I was picturing it was, law enforcement, state's attorneys, DOC, community organizations, including network, crime victim services, that whole spectrum of signatories is who, because we all kind of play our role. I don't see it as just a DOC SAS piece if I'm, really thinking about what a good document would look like.
For
And we
me,
can talk
since
about
it,
that next time. We can talk about it next
yeah,
time.
I mean, because for me, since it includes your responsibilities and DOCs, I appreciate like the chance to give feedback, and I assume that that's what we would do. But I don't feel that I need to dictate what those are in terms of formally signing off. I mean, that's what you all are working through. But I mean, I think, yes, if you and Cassidy can do it today, good. Bye, we'll see you later.
No, it's not gonna be done quickly, because I think they're ideal, right? Because there's victim comp, right? Which is you. So, and then there's the law enforcement responsibilities to the victims. So it can't just be DOC if it's gonna really hold weight. It's gonna have to be everyone that has those victims' rights attached, law enforcement, and we're not gonna get the judiciary to sign it. But I think we could call out what the judiciary's role in there, and we could talk about it next time and all of that, but I think having it really spread across the whole group would be most powerful, but also if that's not palpable, that's fine, and we can, reduce it down. You can think about it next time, Madam Chair, you can think about it next time. Don't stress over it right now. But I was just
Okay,
thinking about it now.
That would be helpful to just kind of let it digest. I mean, I think, again, I kind of feel like there was a specific implicit directive that we had when they set this up, was to have that more warm handoff between pre-conviction, post-conviction, but I understand there are other obligations for other agencies, some of which are represented on this call, that would be giving feedback. So let me just think about that for a little bit, Tim.
Yeah, no, just because we talked about like the law enforcement handoff today, I was like, it felt, when I was putting it together in my head, I was like, I would want to include that in there, and things like making reasonable efforts to do thing X between this intercept, and just the weirdness of what happens post-conviction. It's weird to the people in the system. So I can only imagine what it's like to people outside the system. PCRs and appeals and parole, parole, it's very weird. And Megan's complex chart is probably what's required when I think about it. I like to dumb everything down for myself, but it probably has to be more complex if we're going to be exhaustive. But just think about it for next time. I mean, I'm happy to throw something very rough together and send it over to people to start poking around on. But I just was thinking it might have more power and weight if we have more signatories to this MOU, and just to consider for next time. But I'm also okay with narrowing it, whatever people want to do to get something done.
Okay, and I appreciate again that the other handoff we've been talking about in terms of the booking process, and that might benefit from a more discrete MOU, but I don't know. So all I'm thinking about is we have no public comments that I can see. So as far as steps between now and the next meeting, what I gleaned from the conversation was that there's going to be some updates to the law enforcement form, both in terms of some, more easy pieces. And then the next meeting is 2 weeks from today, Tim. They should all be in your calendar. Haley helped me with that. So looking at that, I'll work with Meredith to, kind of include some more language around that. We'll bring back some more information on the booking and handoff process, what actual paperwork is being sent, and how can we make sure that victims who want to be included and want their information shared, that's happening. Then we're going to work on the written forms. I'll work with Meredith to make sure that we have the, again, because forms have been flying around, to make sure that we have the most recent forms to respond to. Make sure, again, I don't see Tracy on this call any longer, but make sure that disability rights is included. And so that's kind of some of the main homework pieces that I see. Any feedback on forms, as Charlie suggested, we'll just do in writing so that we can kind of just get down to business. Sorry, all, if I'm a little bit stressed out, but I'm like, okay, next meeting is our third one. We only got 3 to go. And this is like becoming the ultimate of rabbit holes. Just trying to make sure that we take advantage of the opportunity when there is interest in making this a better process for victims and survivors. Oh, and then, oh yes, I see that, Tim. We are also going to maybe start to put together or look at a chart that has some of those different steps so that we can kind of visualize, again, are we getting everything as possible? And we won't solve the world problems on this, the task force, but we can say, here's another area. The courts have been mentioned a couple of times. So here are the pieces that we see other players should be involved in. And again, there are other issues I know that are out there in terms of how Vine can be expanded. But for now, this is where we are as I see it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.